Hey guys, welcome to the fundamentals video this week where we're going to be talking a lot about the lumbar spine. We're going to focus on the lumbar spine misalignments as well as some motion palpation and how we're going to be checking out the spine to get a listing. And then lastly, we're going to be showing you how to set up the pull moves based on the listing that we found from the motion palpation. My name is Rachel. I'm a quarter 9 here at Palmer and I'm a Gonstead officer.
Hi, my name is Chris. I am also a quarter 9 and I'm also a Gonstead officer.
So to start out the video, we're going to talk about the lumbar misalignments and how those vertebrae are going to subluxate. So actually when we're talking about this, you can apply the general components to all different vertebrae throughout the spine. So you can go from the lumbar, thoracic, and the cervicals. The only one that will be a little bit different is going to be your atlas. So just keep that in mind. So we have 3 components that we talk about in the Gonstead system of how a vertebra can misalign. So the very first component that we talk about is posteriority. So the Gonstead system, we believe that every vertebra, the first direction that it's going to move in order to subluxate is posterior and inferior. So if my hand is a vertebra and my thumb's a spinous process, we're saying that it's moving posterior and inferior. So here, if we're focused on this green vertebra, L1, it's going to move back and down. And that's going to be the first component of the listing. So that would give you a P. The second component of the listing is going to be the rotation component. So you have 2 directions that a vertebra can move. It can either go right and be stuck in right rotation. So we're focusing on the spinous process in this case. So spinous process moves right on L1. So that would be an R. Or it can move left and be stuck in left rotation, giving you an L. So you'll always have a P on the first listing, and then you can have either an R or an L for rotation. Then the third part or component of the listing system is where we're gonna be talking about your wedge. And so when we're talking about wedging, you have 2 different options. It can either be superior or inferior, and we're gonna focus on which way the vertebra is rotated. So say we have a PR, so the vertebra moved posterior as well as to the right, and it's stuck here. So if we are saying that our wedge, that disc wedge, is on the right side over here, which would make the spine move or bend that way a little bit, we're gonna have a PRS. So later when we go to motion palpate, and you'll see the patient wouldn't be able to bend to the right as well because we have a big bulge here. So say again, we have a PR, but then say that the wedge is going to be over here on the left side, causing the patient to bend this way. We'll say now it's an inferior wedge, so your listing would be PRI. So if it's on the same side as that rotation, it's going to be superior. However, if your wedge is on the opposite side of spinous rotation, it'd be considered an inferior wedge. I know it's a lot when we're just going through it for a fundamentals video, but we did write it all down on the paper. So if you're more of a visual and reading learner, you can go through and it's all very specific and detailed and outlined there. So that would be great for you to go through. But that's a quick and dirty little way of how we're gonna do our listing system. Again, you can apply it throughout the whole spine, just not that atlas. So now that we've talked a little bit about how the lumbar segments are going to misalign, I'm going to go ahead and show you how we're going to motion palpate so that we're going to use our hands and some visualization to go ahead and find that restriction on him and how it's subluxated. So I would have my patient sitting here, gowned out if it's a female, sorry my hands are cold, or shirtless if it's a guy. My hands are cold, I'm sorry. But you're gonna grab your patient here. I actually will come down behind them, but it's good to either, you can kind of raptor claw them so you have really good control over your patient, or you can just hold them here on their shoulder. So the first part again of our listing that we're looking for is that posteriority. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take 2 fingers and whatever segment that you're focused on, and remember we kind of have an idea because we've already visualize the full spine. We've already run our scope, which has shown us the areas that we're breaking. So now we can really just go in and focus on those few spots that we're really thinking that the subluxation is already at. So just for this demonstration, I'm gonna go to his L4, L5 disc space. So I'm gonna take my 2 fingers and I'm gonna place the top one on that spinous process and my middle finger of L4, because that's the one I'm thinking might be subluxated. And then I'm going to take my middle finger and place it on the inner spinous space between L4 and L5. So if these are my spinous process, L4, L5, my one finger is here and the other is going to be in that space between. Because when I'm bending him back, I want to feel that those spinous processes are actually approximating. So it almost feels like when I'm bringing him back, it moves away. However, if I bring him back, which he's moving fine, but if he were to have a subluxation there, when I bring him back, it's almost like I'm hitting a wall, like it's stuck and it's not wanting to kind of glide away from me there. So that's the first component. So I'm really not doing too many drastic movements. You really don't have to move too much to feel that spinous process move away. So again, just here in the series of flexion extension, in that space, feeling how it's coming together, or if it was stuck. So that's the first part. Then we're gonna move into the rotational component. So with this, I'm gonna take my two fingers again and place it on, first I'm gonna check right rotation. So I'm gonna place it on the right side of the spinous process of L4, since I'm focusing on that one this time. So I'll come to the right side, I'm gonna rotate him to the right, and as I'm rotating him, I'm gonna kind of follow that spinous and challenge it a little bit with my fingers, right? So I should feel, if there's no subluxation, I should feel that spinous process move from the right to the left and just glide away from me nicely. However, if I go here and it's just stuck and it's not wanting to move away from me, then he's stuck in right rotation. So that would give me an R on the second part of the listing. So we would have a PR if I'm here and it's not moving. So same thing, I always want to check bilaterally, so I'm still in the L4. This time I want to see how he's moving when I bring him into left rotation. So I'm going to come on the opposite side of the spinous process. Now I'm going to be with my two fingers on the left side of the spinous process and rotate him to the left and see how that's moving. Which you can move your whole body and use your other hand and challenge it that way. I just stay here, right, stay here, left. And he's moving better to the left than the right. So that's the second component. And again, if I'm challenging to the left, I want to feel that spinous process move away from me to the right. All right, so that is the rotational component. Last component is the wedging that we want to check. So again, same thing, gonna have my two fingers on the side of his spinous process. So I'm gonna come here and be on the right side, and when I laterally bend him to the right, I want to feel that his spinous process is moving up and away. So if I'm coming here, I want to feel that it's moving up and away in this direction. Okay, so if I bend him, it should move up and away. If it's not, if it's just sticking back at me, I'm assuming that the wedge is going to be on this right side. Okay, again, checking bilateral. So I'm going to go to that spinous process, bend him, go to the left side of the spinous process, and then check the left side. And in this case, it should be moving up and away to the right. And it's moving fine. However, if I bent him this way and it's stuck that way, we're gonna say the wedge is on his left side. And just a quick little blurb about visualization, which I like to include in this part when I'm checking for wedging just as a backup. You can also kind of step away from your patient and look at that area where you think he's subluxated. And I'll cover up just below the L4 region. And if I bend him this way, we're kind of looking to see how his spine is curving, okay? So if I bend him to the right, I want to see that his curve is just nice and a fluid little curve here. So if there's no wedge, then you're gonna have a really pretty little curve going up his spine. However, if I bend him to the right and there's a wedge there, it's almost gonna just be like a straight line and then jagged curve up here. So he doesn't like going to the left quite as much as the right. So he has a smooth curve, and then I'll go to the left and it kind of straightens out, and then it'll go because he might have some kind of wedging on the left. So that's just another tool that you can throw in there to kind of help you visually see where there might be a wedge. So.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about some clinical pros and some clinical tips to help you palpate better, and just some things that I've learned along the way that helped me palpate a little bit better. So when we come to the patient, the first thing is, we want to visualize what we're palpating all the time. Visualization is so important. It is very important to visualize the tissue that we're going to work on. So one of the things that I always say is keep the lightest hands possible. At first, when you start to palpate, you're not going to feel nearly as much, and you're not going to feel anything. You're going to be like, I don't feel much. The lighter you are and the more you do it, it's like riding a bike. It will get better, I promise. Also, being very at ease and being calm while you're palpating. Your patient can feel when you're tense. If I'm grasping Rachel and my grasp up here is really tight and my hand is really tight, she's going to tighten up as well. For you to deliver good care to any patient you see, you have to be able to be calm and be able to deliver it properly. So the first thing I like to do is I like to, even before I start to put my fingers, the tips of my fingers on the spinuses, I like to just feel with a whole hand, kind of just the motion, and feeding it as I extend back. This is just a global palpation, so I like to globally feel it, feel the musculature around it, feel the whole physiology of what's going on at the area that I'm trying to palpate. Then I come in with a soft contact and feel the spinous in any way I want to feel. So another thing is, a lot of people at first poke and prod. They like poke their two fingers and they just push really hard. I believe that you should almost have more contact than just your fingers. You should almost, I like to do almost an open hand so I can almost have all my fingers on the back at least, and it doesn't feel pokey or proddy. It almost feels like a hug in a sense. So now that we've talked about that, a big thing is when you're palpating, sometimes you slip off the spinous up or down and all this stuff. We talk so much about tissue pull in our adjustments. I believe we should tissue pull also in our palpation. So what I do is sometimes, if I'm trying to feel L5 spinous, okay, I can almost tissue pull up, grab up here, and now I even have a better feeling of what L5 is doing because I've moved the tissue out of the way. You'd be surprised if you start tissue pulling before you palpate, you'll be surprised how much more you can feel. Another big thing that Rachel talked about earlier is grips. How do you want to have your patient? You got to understand that when you're palpating 50, 60, how many ever people you want to palpate a day, you have to have good posture. So some docs like to have those rolly chairs, all this stuff. When we're in clinic and things, we don't really have those. So I try to keep either right next to them and just kind of use my body weight to move them. Not moving my arm much, but use my body weight. It make sure my back's up straight, and I almost bring them back and right and left. So I'm almost moving my body with theirs. You'd be surprised moving your arm all day what that will do for you. So I like to use my body in the palpation like I use my body weight in the adjustment as well. A few more things. So wedging is always really tough to find. You always feel like, oh, it's wedged on this side. It can be tight musculature up here or anything like that. My biggest advice to you when you're trying to find the wedge, and also for rotation, really try to isolate that one joint you're trying to do. Don't bend it all the way over. Really try to specifically isolate that joint. And also, one more tidbit. Once you get, this is for a little upper quarter students, but I do this all the time, and once you do it, it makes so much more sense. It's called how we cut the pie in the cervical. We can also do it in the lumbar spine as well. So for example, if I have her in, I think it's a right rotation fixation, and I think the wedge is on that side, I can actually put her in right rotation and find out where the wedge is. And why that is helpful is because we can actually find where the best position we need to put in our patient to actually adjust them the most specifically way. So other than that, motion palpation is so important. You need to know it. And the only way, this isn't something that you just get gifted. Some people get gifted with soft hands or able to feel things, but this is something that needs to be practiced. And this could be some of the most important things that you do while you're at school. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a pull move. A pull move is exactly like a push move. It's just a little bit of different biomechanics with the stabilization. So I just wanted to show you on a spine model basically what we're doing during this move. So when we set it up, person's in a side posture position, right side is down. So for example, this listing would be like a L5 PRS, because we're gonna pull it from right to left, I to S, and P to A, okay? So we call this an involved side down move because the PRS, the right side, is the involved side, which is down on the table. So now that we have it, we're gonna keep our leg up here, and I'll show you better when I have a patient. But what we're doing is we're grabbing this spinous right here, and we're leaning the patient this way, and we're rocking our body over, and we're sending it through the joint. It's not a pull this way, it's a finger push into the joint. You know, a big part about this is actually, we still want to get that huge P to A. That is the most prominent part of our listing. So we really do need to get that P to A push as well. So Rachel, can I have you sit down for me real quick? And you can lay on your side. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna set up a real quick setup. Perfect patient placement is in another video, in the previous video that we did, I think with fundamentals with ilium pushes. So what we're gonna do is we have our leg in the proper position. We're now gonna, just real quickly, practice what I preach. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull. When we were in a push, remember it was like this, okay? Now with a pull, we're gonna be doing the exact same thing, just a little bit different with our legs and our arms. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna roll over. We're always, most of the time, rolling over like to ourselves, because if you look, my back is in a good position. I'm gonna be doing this 100 times a day, so I don't wanna be leaning over every time to grab my contact. So we're gonna roll the patient over, keep my back straight. So for example, if we have PRS on this side, I'm gonna pull from right to left, I to S, grab that L5 spinous. Now that I have it, my hand is really pretty relaxed. Like, I'm not digging into her or anything like that. It's pretty, just holding the spinous between my two fingers. My next move is we're going to now stabilize that shoulder back, okay? So now it's not pushing or rotating this way. It's just straight pressure, just I to S, basically. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come over this way with our leg, and we're now going to not let the patient roll too much this way. We're going to let her gradually roll, and I'm gonna grab my contact there. Now that I'm here, the thrust is gonna look like this. My leg's gonna adduct, it's gonna go down a little bit into the table, my body weight's gonna lean over, and I'm gonna push in, and this hand's gonna stay where it's supposed to stay. So what that kind of looks like is we're gonna adduct, get the joint to tension, lean over, and adduct, get the joint to tension, and okay. So now that we've seen that, Rachel, can you flip over to the other side? I just want to do that one more time. So now you can see it from this position as well. Something that you can learn at home, and this is for the younger quarters, start to get those adductors together, those muscle groups in your legs. You can balance on one leg and kind of just adduct in, adduct in, adduct in, getting that balance, because this move requires a lot of balance. So now coming from this way, same thing with the legs, keeping them together, making sure the patient doesn't roll over. Still good patient placement. Roll over, my back is straight as a unit. We're gonna come here. Now we're gonna be talking about a PLS listing. So we're gonna tissue pull from left to right, I to S, grabbing that spinous like this. And we're gonna extend out this way, move the leg over just a tad, come up, not up here, not down here, right here. And that ankle needs to be on the other side. A big thing that I learned that helped me out was right before I thrust, I make sure that ankle is super relaxed and I'm not tense. So what it looks like from the back, I'm just gonna lower my leg. I'm gonna come over the contact, roll a little bit more, come over my contact, and in the table. Adduct, lean, in the table. Okay? So that's just a little bit of a lesson on the setups. It's a lot more than that. If I'm a younger quarter and I'm trying to learn these things, the first thing I would start with is try to get that hand motion and that leg motion in tune. So we're gonna adduct a little bit, set. Adduct a little bit, set. Kind of just to get that muscle memory in your head. But I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. We enjoyed teaching it. I hope you guys have a good night, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you guys. We'll see you soon.